My name is Belén Olmedo Guerra. I'm a criminal defense attorney in Arizona. My office is in Phoenix. I decided to start a podcast because it is important to understand all the players that it takes to get an accused person through a case. It's not so simple like you see in a TV show that people come with the black light and in less than 30 minutes, the back doors of the courtroom swing open and suddenly the end of the case happens. The reality is that it takes a village. It takes so many people to get through a case if the lawyer is doing a good job. Today, we're going to be talking about bail bonds. What happens when a person gets detained and then they have to figure it out whether they can get out of custody or not? That's a very difficult situation for the person who's accused and also for their loved ones. They're trying to figure everything out at the same time of having to deal and cope with the stress of a charged case. Today, we're going to be talking to Randy Feldman and Leon Queanville from Sanctuary Bail Bonds. They are magnificent people who help a lot of my clients. I'm not getting any kickbacks from them, but I do trust them that they're going to take care of my clients like I would. So today we're going to talk to them and learn how do bail bonds work in the state of Arizona and how is that they do their day-to-day job. Thank you for being here. We have Randy Feldman and Leon Queanville. So you're with Sanctuary Bail Bonds, right?
Correct. Yeah. Thanks for having us here today. Yes.
Yeah, my pleasure. So I want to talk a little bit about your business. So you both work for Sanctuary. If I could start with you, Leon, if you can tell me a little bit about your journey and how did you end up being here at Sanctuary?
Okay. Well, I've been with Sanctuary for about almost 6 years now, and it really started with my relationship with Tom and Randy. Those are the owners, and we've been friends for probably 30 years or so. Our relationship goes
Wow.
a long way back, and I came back to Arizona. I had been away for a little while, and was really trying to decide what I wanted to do. But I knew that if I had a choice, I wanted to be able to work with family and friends, and I wanted to see if I could make a living, but also do good. And they had been telling me what was going on with Sanctuary Bail Bonds, and they had a spot in mind in particular. They knew how important the attorney relationship was with their business, and they really kind of wanted a new person to spearhead that relationship. So they asked me if I would come on to Sanctuary Bail Bonds and be the lawyer liaison. And that's, for instance, how you and I have met. So my job is to go out there and make relationships with the attorneys in Arizona, try to be as helpful as possible, share the benefits and things like that. And I think it was just Tom and Randy understanding my personality, knowing that I wanted to go out and meet people and try to be as helpful as possible. And it ended up being a good combination for me to come on and take over that position. And it's worked out really well. I feel good about the relationships we've made in town. And I always feel good whenever we're able to help out the families, like you said, get the loved ones out.
That's great. Thank you for sharing that. I know that we're a lot of lawyers here in Arizona. We're over 17,000 lawyers in Arizona. So it's difficult for us as attorneys to figure it out. Where do we send our clients? I know at first when I went into the private sector to work at a law firm, it was like a sea of options.
Mm.
And I can only imagine when families call your office. So, can you tell me a little bit about the structure and who receives the calls?
Right. Well, it is important to understand that when the family needs somebody to be bonded out, a loved one or a family member or whatever, it's usually a very trying time. They're not calling us usually at their best moment. It's something that they're usually not prepared for and not expecting. So we have to be really careful when we handle them, and we try to be as understanding as possible. We're never judgmental. We really try to understand what they're going through and then try to help them through it as best we can. Usually what happens is that when they call our main number, one of our agents answer. And one of the things that I think we're most proud about is that a lot of other bail bond companies in town have answering services, or they have, voicemail or whatever. You leave a message and they'll get back to you eventually. We answer our phones 24/7, and we don't have a service. It's all of the bond agents that work at the office. So at any given time, any one of the licensed bond agents, you call 24 hours, 2 a.m. in the morning, they're going to answer the phone. And that's what I think is a really big part. They don't have to send someone's going to get back to you, someone's going to call you back with information. They can handle all the questions right then and there. And usually the families have a ton of questions. But it starts with that first phone call. Usually they start out, just, hey, I'd like to get some information, and we try to walk them through it step by step. It's there's a lot to it, and we want them to make sure that they understand everything that they're going to have to do, everything that their loved one is going to go through. There's a lot of steps, but we break it down for them, and I think it's one of the things that we hear people like about us the best. If you read our online reviews and stuff, they usually talk about how friendly and open the staff is, and we're really proud about that.
Yeah, I always hear about that when I send you clients. So, Randy, you're one of the owners, right?
Yes.
Okay, so how in the world did you decide one day I'm going to start a bail bonds company?
It was not something we planned. My partner, Tom Serino, and I were working in the hospitality industry business. We've been working for restaurants and nightclubs forever. And one day, one of our employees and one of his friends were actually working in the recovery department for a bail bond company. And recovery is when, let's say, a client chooses or doesn't go to court, gets a warrant for his arrest, or whoever put the collateral up for the bond decided they no longer want to be on the bond, they had the opportunity to revoke the bond, put the person back in jail. And that situation has occurred, and many times our door host would tell us about what happened and the stories in that situation. And he said, if somebody ran a bond company like they run a restaurant, hospitality industry, making it feel like it's a service as opposed to an obligation for the client, they can do very well in the industry. So Tom and I sat down and we thought about it, and we talked to the gentleman's name was David, talked to David, and Ryan was the fourth person. And we said, you know what, we'll put the systems together. We'll run this like it is a hospitality situation where we appreciate the person calling us, where we appreciate the phone call and going over the situations, where we treat them as clients and not run it as a predatory business, which a lot of bond companies do. They make the person or people feel like they have no choices but to use their service, and when they use it, they have no control.
Yeah.
We said the complete opposite. Let's explain every part of the bond industry to the family and friend who's looking to help so they can make a smart decision. And then from there, if they choose to continue with us, we'll make sure that the client does the exact same paperwork, gets the exact same treatment, so they know what's expected of them when they're on bond. And we started this in 2010, and now in 2025, we've been, if we're not the number one, we feel we are considered the number one bond company in Arizona.
I definitely think you guys are the number one.
Thank you.
Let me backtrack a little bit. So, just to explain to families and people who've been accused of a crime, when you go to court, sometimes they will set a bond, especially for larger cases. And so in the state of Arizona, they're going to set either a bond or no bond, depending on your circumstances. So if you already had other cases open, or there were accusations that were very serious, maybe a premeditated murder, then the bond might get a little bit sticky. But most of the time, people will get released on their own recognizance, which they call it OR, for small little crimes that they promise to come back, maybe a DUI. But once we get in once we get to felony land, then they will set a bond. Now, the bonds can be difficult, right?
Absolutely.
And so I have a lot of major felonies that they have large bonds.
Yes.
Sometimes they go from 50,000 to 100, 150, $500,000, or even $1 million.
Yes.
When people call my office, and they could be existing clients or potential clients, then now they have a bond situation they have to deal with. When I send them to you, and Leon already explained that you are open 24 hours.
Yes.
What should families know to understand the process? Because everybody's situation is different, but if you could give them an overview
Sure.
of what they should expect, because I assume there's paperwork involved.
Yes. First, never expect that the judge understands the bond industry either, because what we get is a lot of phone calls that say, we were told it's 10%. There are states that just say 10%, and that's the fee a bond company would charge. So in your situation with a $500,000 bond, 10%, $50,000. Unfortunately, Arizona isn't just a 10% state. It is a collateral state, which means that whatever the amount of the bond is, whatever the judge sets, we also have to hold, per our surety company, our insurance company, collateral to secure that bond. So if the bond is the $500,000, we have to be able to show our surety we are holding onto something valued at $500,000 in the event that the person doesn't show up to court, runs away, or picks up new charges or repeats additional charges while on bond that could put the bond in jeopardy.
So what you're saying, let me see if I can just kind of translate it in some easier terms for people. So when it is not a cash bond, it's a secure bond, they need the 10% plus property or vehicles. You take vehicles?
Yes, we take cash, we take credit card, we take jewelry, we take property, houses, we take vehicles as long as they're registered in Arizona. We have a limit to what year it is so that it has enough value to at least value enough for the bond. We could take multiple items of any of this, and it doesn't have to be the person or family. It could be friends of the family, could be collateral outside of state if it's property. We have to have something to show that secures that bond, correct?
What if one family member doesn't have the full collateral? Would you be able to work with a family, let's say with 2 or 3 family members
Absolutely.
that want to help?
Absolutely. We many times will take collateral, houses from different states, different family members signing on to it. As long as they fill out the the paperwork correctly, we place the lien on the house. Once the bond is posted, the family is notified. We have them see all the paperwork that everybody sees. They sign everything. Everybody is aware. We put systems in place so the family knows we're protecting their collateral. The biggest concern that we have as a bond company that a lot of bond companies don't follow is we're protecting those people that didn't commit the crime. So if a family member puts up their house, they weren't involved in the crime, but they're the ones at risk. So the person that was in jail, we want to make sure we're communicating with them and then communicating with the family to say they're checking in time, they're going to their court dates, so they have a sense of ease to know that we're involved from the beginning of the bond posted until the bond has been exonerated.
So let's talk about a couple of things. Let's say that I send you a client and you and the family work out the bond. I have heard that sometimes, depending on the case, you will put an electronic monitoring device like an ankle monitor. Does that have GPS? Can you explain a little bit about that?
Yes, there's 2 different systems. We as a bond company have a GPS system, and then there's a GPS ankle monitor system from the jail. Unfortunately, in Arizona, the jail does not communicate with the bond company. So a lot of times the families are confused on that. Why do you need to put a bond ankle monitor when the jail already did? Well, since we can't control that monitor, we have no involvement, there will be times that we'll request it, whether the family has asked that of us as a condition of their release, or whether we feel the collateral might not reach the number we need to reach, but we're willing to invest and take the chance on them. We might say we're going to put an ankle monitor on them so that we can monitor it. It has a GPS system. It allows us to locate them 24/7. Another system we have is called Captira. That allows us from the office every 2 days. We usually do Tuesdays and Fridays, and that can be extended based on what the family wants. They can make it every day. The client has to call and check in with us.
Okay.
When they call the number, it's actually a link that is sent to their phone. They click on the link, it takes a picture of them and sends us at the office notification that they are checking in, so that we're on top of every case. And if they don't check in, it notifies us right away that they didn't make a day of checking in, allowing us to then go on the system, find out how many times they've missed, call them directly, and if we can't get a hold of them, immediately call the people, the indemnitors, people who put the collateral up, and notify them, hey, we're having an issue contacting so-and-so who's on our bond. Have you been in contact with them? And there's times where they say, oh, yes, the phone died, or they're here with us right now, and allows us to say, all right, let's just keep an eye on it. Or there's times where they say, we haven't heard from them for weeks. And that allows us to flag the account and say, you know what, we need to keep an eye on this as ourselves. If we feel it's at risk, we might want to look at either doing a revocation of it, or we do just a check where we send our recovery team to verify the person's still living where they're at, to verify that their phone is still working, and make sure that they're ahead or aware of what's required on the bond again before we move to having to revoke the bond.
So, a couple of things you mentioned that I think are important highlighting. You have direct communication with the family members.
Yes.
So, if the situation is getting a little bit sticky for family and they don't want to lose their house
Yes.
or their property, they can reach out to you. But you have also the power to revoke your bond and put the client back into custody. Is that right?
Correct. When they sign the documents, they're granting us power of attorney in that situation. They're allowing us to say at any time, if we feel the person isn't doing what is expected of them, if they're not checking in, if they're not going to court as expected, we can do a compliance check where we go to their house to verify they're still there, or we can choose to revoke the bond. It is never our first choice, but it is an option that we have in our arsenal, because our priority in this is not only to make sure the person goes to court and handles the situation, but it's to protect the family and friends who have decided to take this risk.
I don't know that a judge would like that, frankly, that somebody gets remanded into custody because they're not complying with the bail bonds. That's going to flag the case. So I think it's in everybody's best interest that they comply while they're out on bond, whether it's with your company or with other people.
Well, because a bond is only a promise to appear. So
Yeah.
it is, if you're not following the conditions and we place them back in jail, you're telling the court, I violated what my court orders as a promise to appear, per se, and we have no involvement in guilt or innocence of the case. That is not part of anything that has to do with the bond company. We are only there to provide a service. And as providing that service, if you're not following those conditions, you're placed back in jail. That does, like you say, put a red flag in front of the judge to say, you know, if they're not even following bond conditions, how much can I trust when I'm coming to sentence?
And that's part of the relationship that we were talking about with the attorneys,
Yeah.
because I know that it does affect your case.
Right.
And one of the things that we've done up to this point is that if we decide, hey, look, things are not going right, and there are flags on our end that maybe we need to revoke this, one of the first calls is usually to you.
Right.
You have
Now,
called me before.
I have
Yes.
several times, and
You
we'll say,
guys call me
there's
before.
something that's not working right. Can you look into this?
Yeah.
And sometimes it's a simple phone call from you.
Yeah.
And you reach out to them and you say, hey, you're not checking in, you're not doing what you said you were going to do. They're considering putting you back. It's really important that you stay out.
Yes.
And so that relationship and that the conversations we have, it helps a lot. Like you said earlier, it takes a group, it takes a community, it takes a village sometimes to do these things.
Yes.
And when we're talking with the families, when we're talking with the attorneys, it makes a big difference.
Yeah, no, and I appreciate you reminding me of that, because I know I have gotten calls from you. Not that many, because my
Right.
clients usually behave pretty well.
Yes.
But I've gotten a couple of calls from you looking for someone. And usually when I just make a phone call or two,
Mhm.
they will get back in touch. But it is important that, like you both said, we have communication all together. Okay. Now let's go back to what you mentioned. There is a recovery agent. Are we talking somebody like the bounty hunter here?
That's what people are familiar with calling them, dog the bounty hunter stereo
Yeah.
and stuff. Yes, we have chosen in our company, we hire an outside company to handle all those situations. We provide them with the file explaining where all the information is, our best and most current information where the person might be, where they hang out. And they either will then look at revoking the bond per our choice to say, we want the person back in jail, or if the family's decided to revoke the bond and put the person back in jail, or we'll do what's called, like I said before, a compliance check, making sure they're doing the right things. Sometimes we get so invested in the case, if it's based on a drug charge, we're concerned that that person might be hanging around with the wrong element. We
Yeah.
might tell the friends or family, we would like to do a compliance check, just because when you're a mother, grandmother, father, whatever the relationship is, you want to believe the best in your son, daughter, whatever, and your clients. But they could fall back into a wrong element, wrong situation. And no mother or grandmother wants to say, I want to put my child or grandchild back in jail.
Right. That's a tough situation.
So we need to play the bad guy.
for sure.
And it's part of education. It's part of at the beginning saying, even when they're doing paperwork, we think this might not be a great decision to bond them out unless you have a rehab place location, unless you've already created the systems to get them a better life, better opportunity, because they're just going to come out, they're going to fall in those same circles, and then the grandmother who had nothing to do with this is going to lose a substantial amount of money in most cases and still feel bad because that person's going to call them from jail and say, get me out again.
Let's talk about the obvious. Sometimes people get in trouble because they have an issue with drugs and alcohol.
Yes.
So I have clients that get arrested and then they go into custody and they have to go through detox in custody until family can get them out. Sometimes 2 or 3 days, sometimes a week or 10 days. And that's a tough time. How do you handle those situations when somebody is being bonded out and they have an addiction? Do you require additional compliance, or do you take into consideration, let's say, pretrial services when they are court order to go take analysis like urinalysis or blood work that shows whether they are sober or not?
Right. Well, there's a few steps. First, it goes to education. And on our side, our staff is trained to pay attention to the case, the charges, and the history. So we run background history on most cases we do, and then we trust within our staff to make sure we are either choosing to help or maybe recommending not to help. There are bond companies that are going to say yes, no matter what the situation are. We're not one, but in those cases where we decide the best option is still to help, we do have that honest conversation with the indemnitors to say, they have a history of not showing up to court. They have a history of drugs.
Wait, but those are the family, right?
Friends and
People
family, correct.
That are putting
If you're saying from jail calling me or from family members calling?
anyone who's calling you that, could be themselves, because sometimes people are in denial.
Right, most times.
That they have an issue.
Yes.
But it's tough when they are going through that detox process and then suddenly they get out.
Yes.
It's easy to go back and use.
Right. The situation we run into the most of the time is if they are older and their family has set up a detox facility for them to go after court, the fact that they're 21 years old, they can sign themselves out at any time. So we try our best to have communication with the facilities. Now, they are not required to communicate with us. And the person sometimes isn't even required to go to court because they can't leave the facility.
Yeah.
So we try our best to communicate. We still have them check in with us twice a week if they're allowed to use the phones. Or we'll have a family member who's communicating with them check in on their behalf. And then we put notes to say on these dates, they're supposed to go to court, these dates, they can be released. So there are times where we'll take that decision. But part of the paperwork they sign is also allowing us to do random drug tests. So if we feel or we hear from their friends or family that there's a concern with the wrong element, we can require a drug test. And if they fail the drug test, we will then call the friend or family and say they failed. We would recommend them please be revoked, put back in jail because they are not getting the help they need. Or we'll require them to have to go to a facility. And a lot of times you're here, well, they're going to go in 2 days, they're going to go in 3 days, we promise. We're going to have to weigh whether we feel that they're actually going to be honest about this, or we think even if the family is against us making the decision to put them back in jail. Jail is never a cure for them. They need help. It's a sickness. But leaving them on the streets and having family ignore the problem isn't going to help either.
And one of the other services that we offer that I don't think that all the bail bond companies do is that we do have relationships with some of the rehab facilities.
Right.
So whenever the family comes to us, or even when the defendant gets out and comes in and meets with us for the first time, we do have people that we can recommend and people that we can suggest to them. Now, obviously, we're not doctors and we're not going to do any of that part of it, but we do have some relationships out there to say, hey, you might want to talk to these people, and especially more with the family that say, like, when their loved one gets out, you might want to call them. You might want to look into this brochure, go online, call these people. Right. But we do have some people that we recommend to them and just say, again, it's like it's more than just us. There's a lot to this, and it's one of the services that we also provide.
And it's so tough because for families to be able to afford a bond, it's sometimes so overwhelming.
Very true.
And then on top of that, putting somebody, their loved one, the same person, into a rehab facility can be daunting.
Right.
Now, that's so great that you also help with that aspect. I help my clients as well. And I just did one 2 weeks ago where a client's family was trying to help the client, and they have to work with insurance.
Oh, yeah.
Mm.
And sometimes once they find a facility, the facility is full. So then they have to open a bed at some point.
Right.
So you are waiting a day, 2 days, 3 days, 4 days.
Hmm.
And so it's tough. And I know, and I want to thank you as a company for being so good, because I have had clients who are waiting for a bed. And so there are all these moving parts where the bond is ready, but then client has to go to rehab, and then we're waiting for a bed. And I know your company in the past, and I'm not saying that they're going to do this for everybody, but they have even gone to pick up one of my clients at the jail,
Yes.
transported them directly to the facility. And so that has been extremely helpful.
Right.
I want to thank you for that, because I know it's tough. And transporting somebody from jail, it's not easy because you're waiting for them at the door and you're waiting for them to get out. So that's so tough.
Well, part of why we think we succeed is because we're not looking for return clients. We're looking for solutions. And we work hand in hand with you, attorneys, that understand that there's more to getting them out than just getting them out. We're trying to better their lives. And we can do daily check-ins. We can make them come in person. We can change our conditions of release to fit any situation so that the families understand we're trying to create a solution. And we've had success with a lot of people in a lot of years, and we still have clients that we bonded out in 2011, friends and family calling us, stopping by and bringing cookies just to say you changed our lives. And that's where it's worth it. I mean, we are all families. We are all, couples, wives, married, husbands, all of that. And we're not a bond company. We are all friends and partners that work together. So
It's so fantastic. And that's why I invited you both here to come today, so we can share with everybody what the aspect is of bonding someone out. So just to recap, if somebody calls you, let's say 5 o'clock in the evening, what's the process and who answers the phone? And also, do you have people who are bilingual?
you want?
Yeah, we do have bilingual. We have a Spanish speaker for sure, available 24/7. If he's not the one answering the phone, he's available to speak with the family. So we get that a lot. And again, usually when they call that first time, we usually try to find out what the bond amount is, try to find out, what their needs are, what they're looking to do. And then that's where the process starts. Okay, we know the bond amount. Is it cash only? Is it secured? Are you trying to get them out right away? Is this something we want to do in a week when you have made other arrangements for them? And then we start talking about what they'll need to be able to do the bond. If, do they have a house? Do they have a car? Do they just want to use cash? There's it's a big checklist that we just go through step by step. But again, it's really important that we take them through it step by step so they know exactly what they need, exactly what's expected of them, and what's going to happen. And we break it down even to the point of they'll probably walk out the door at around this time of night.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Because sometimes you've got like a single mom that has to figure out how to pick up, her son or whatever. It's just even the simple things are not always simple.
That's
Right.
so
So
tough.
we walk them through the whole process the best we can.
Yeah. And
And so, can't somebody bond out on the same day? Let's say you get a call earlier in the day. Can
Yes.
you do the paperwork and help and post the bond all on the same day?
well, the paperwork itself probably takes 20 minutes, as long as we have the
That's great.
information ahead of time. What takes the longest is getting the information from the court that confirms
Yeah.
what the friends and family and we thought the bond would be, and making sure there's no mistakes. That's a big issue, is that, they are human at the Maricopa County jails, or SIMS, it's called, that handles most of the bond information. So they make mistakes. They'll tell us it's a secure bond when it's a cash only. They'll tell us everything's fine to go, and then it turned out there's a hold because of a warrant.
Yeah.
But our process takes 20, 30 minutes. It could take hours if the family chooses to ask us a lot of questions, and we're fine with that.
Yeah.
The more they know, the better they're off. Better off they are at this situation. But once we go post the bond, which takes us only minutes because we're 2 blocks from the jail.
Yeah, that's
What-
fantastic.
The court asks to give them 6 to 8 hours, up to 24 hours to release them, because we don't know if there's a hold in jail. We don't know if there's flights.
An ankle bracelet.
And they only do ankle bracelets twice a day.
Yeah.
They do it at 10 in the morning and 5 at night.
Yeah.
So you have to get on a list at a certain time to be able to make that. So we promise nothing because we can't control that part. We can only try our best to keep them updated. And we have no problem if we post a bond and we think it'll be 8 hours, and now 8 hours, the mother's calling saying, "Where's my son?" We'll call the jail. Has he been processed? Has she been released? Because they just release. They don't release and say, now you can call somebody.
Oh,
They
yeah.
just release them. It's a horrible situation for anybody waiting, but we have no control of that. So we do the best we can. We've had people that we would go pick up, or we'll call a cab for and have them come, or they can come right to our office since we're a couple blocks away, do the paperwork right away, and they can go be on their way. But I would hate to tell anybody that, yes, they can do it on the same day. We've had cases where they've had it done in the same day, but that's only because the court moved it so quickly and the jail moved so quickly. Normally, I would say if the bond is posted at 8 at night, expect they'll be released somewhere early morning.
Well, and I have to tell you, I know that you've gotten a lot of my clients out on the same day. I know they're not promising that.
Right.
They're not
Sorry, glad it works
promising
out
that,
that way.
but
Yeah.
I know that you've done that.
Yes.
So thank you so much for coming. I really appreciate you. And just to make sure people know, you serve this entire state of Arizona.
Correct. We have transfer bond agents. We are located in Phoenix, but we are able to post in any county.
Fantastic. Thank you both.
Thank you for
for
having us.
coming.
Yep.
And hope to see you soon.
Thank
Thank you. Thank you.